club, which means we learn and we train to speak online. That's what we like to do. We like to talk. So we'll start talking and explaining who we are. Let's talk about our club. First of all, a quick reminder or quick explanation for those who don't know Toastmasters. Toastmasters is an American institution, a non-profit institution, which was founded in 1924. So it's about 100 years old. And it is spread in more than 145 countries, 364,000 members within more than 16,000 clubs spread around those countries. What do we do? What do we train here? We train about communication as public speaking, and also a lot of other competence about leadership. And why is that important? And people from different backgrounds. For instance, in this club, we have people from project management. About 1/3 of our members are project managers, but we also have different areas. We have lawyers, we have people from health services, and many backgrounds. What is our club? What is special about our club? This club has been founded by a project management community. It was founded in 2016 by members of the PMI chapter Portugal. Okay? So they found the need, the importance about the communication on project management, into both leadership and communication. That's why they have created this club. Although it is an independent club, it is a Toastmasters club. It was founded mostly by project management. And why? Just for two simple reasons, which you should not disregard. For those who know PMI PMBOK, the Project Management Book of Knowledge, that's very important. They talk about two skills for project management. One is about communication, as I said before, and some studies show that most influenced project managers spend about 90% of their time on speaking, on communicating. That's why we are here training communication, both speaking, listening, and interpersonal skills. And also PMI has created the concept of the TMI talent triangle, and one of those sides is leadership. So that's why we train here, because it's important for the project management role. And how it works, how do we train, how do we learn here in Toastmasters? Basically in two ways. One is based on manuals. The manuals that Toastmasters have here are based on more than 90 years experience on training and communications. And since 2018, they have created a new learning experience called Pathways. What is different on Pathways? Basically, all the contents are online. We can do our studies online. There is a lot of learnings and projects we can do. And there are currently 11 different paths. So you can choose, for instance, presentation mastery, which is the basic for presentation. We have leadership development and, for instance, humor. And if we think about just a quick analogy on with these paths and Agile, we can say that there are 5 levels, which are 5 sprints. Okay, and on each sprint, we have to deliver 3 to 4 projects. Each project, for instance, the first project is about icebreakers. How we present ourselves to the clubs, and then there is some specific per part, and then some which is customized. But basically, there are manuals based on a lot of experience. The first part is the projects, which people come here to present and to be evaluated. And the second part is what we are doing now, and we will do in a normal, ordinary session, which are a lot of roles that we do in our meetings. For instance, today I'm the Toastmaster of the day, which means I'll be the host. We also have Anna Pep, who will be the timekeeper, and in a regular session we will have evaluators and a lot of other roles. All of them are part of the learning process. Today, what we have today, who we have today, we have a special guest, Cesario. He'll talk about Agile, and that will be the main point. So, and what is the agenda? Basically, this quick presentation I'm doing now about Toastmasters and our club. Then I'll pass the word to Rodrigo, and then there'll be a Q&A at the end. Okay, so we'll start with Rodrigo at, let me see, at 7:13, but we can wait a little more. And then Rodrigo will present, do the quick presentation. Then we'll have the Q&A at your presentation, then the Q&A. Before we proceed, let me just ask how many guests do we have here, and how did they learn about this seminar or this workshop, this learning moment? If some of the guests want to tell how they know about this workshop. Can you have a sound for our guests? If some of the guests want to tell us how did they get here?
Hi, Roberto. Good afternoon.
Hello.
Daniel Alves from this side. I've just received the email from your team telling me about this specific moment. So I was really interested, so I just jumped in.
Okay, thank you very much, Daniel. Thanks for joining. I know that you are going to give a presentation next week, right, on the PMI chapter, PM Talks?
Oh, that's correct, on the 31st of May, next Monday, 7 p.m. Thank you for this.
Okay, so I'm doing I'm promoting your meeting because I also expected to be there. The talk is about managing stakeholders on an uncertainty environment, okay? It will be in Portuguese, but I expect that some of us will be there. So how did you know? So you learn about this learning moment from our newsletter, right?
Yes, I'm on the mailing list, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for sharing, and thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Daniel. Someone else would like to tell us how did they get here? Okay, maybe we don't have sound. So I suggest that we move on. And Rodrigo, I'll give you the word. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Just before I give you the word, just a quick note for our guests. At the end, so expect to finish by 8 o'clock 35, 8:30. We'll leave the microphone on, and if some of you would like to learn more about Toastmasters, we can speak at the end. About the learning moment, we'll have the Q&A session. Okay. So Rodrigo, I'll give you the stage.
Thank you, Roberto. So I'm supposed to introduce Cesario. I'm going to make a brief presentation about Cesario, and then I'll pass the word to Cesario, because that's the one. Cesario is the one we are all waiting to hear from. So very quickly, I met Cesario 2 years ago. At the time, I was looking for a certification course in this area of scaling Agile. I had a lot of courses in Scrum, Product Owner, Agile methodologies, and I was looking for the next big thing. And I heard from friends of mine that I should look for scaling Agile. So stop looking into the single Scrum team and start looking how it would work if we look beyond that. So we'll start looking at how does several Scrum teams could work together in a whole department or the whole organization. And I started looking for, at the time I was looking for SAFe courses. SAFe is stands for Scaling Agile Framework. But a friend of mine who is a Scrum trainer, he told me to stop looking for Scrum, start looking into less. and less stands for large scale Scrum. And when I began to look for less courses, that's when I found Cesario. And again, this happened 2 years ago, and I enrolled for a course with Cesario in Utrecht 2 years ago. So Cesario is the name is very Portuguese. I believe Cesario has relatives in Portugal, but Cesario is from the Netherlands. So that's the reason why we're having this session in English. But then I went to Utrecht. I had this course with Cesario, and we kept in touch after the course. So we talked about last year. We talked about having this session in Portugal with Cesario, but we got surprised by the pandemic. So, but we kept on talking, and we decided, well, since everyone is making this kind of sessions online with Zoom, let's try to do the same here. And here we are. We're having this session here with Zoom, but hopefully, Cesario, I think if I can convince Cesario for next year, we may have it in person here in Portugal and have some pastéis de nata as well here for everyone. And it would be nice. Anyway, to explain to you, to tell you a little bit about the background of Cesario. Cesario is a senior management consulting operating worldwide in the financial and high-tech industries. His international experience, strong background in technology makes him an influential partner in organization design and the Agile adoption. Cesario is the author of the books Emergent, Lean and Agile Adoption for an Innovative Workplace, and is also co-author of a Scrum book. Is a co-author with other authors like Jeff Sutherland. For those of you who are familiar with this name, Jeff Sutherland is known to be one of the founding fathers of Scrum. Cesario is frequently invited speaker at conferences around the world and the first professional of Scrum.org trainer, and also the first less large-scale Scrum trainer in the Netherlands. So I think we're all very lucky to have Cesario here with us. Cesario, thank you very much for being here and for giving this moment with you today. I'm going to ask everyone, if you have questions for Cesario, please use the chat here. And in the end, I will select, if we have too many, I will select some questions for Cesario. We have some limited time for Cesario to answer, but still I selected the questions for you for Cesario. And again, as Roberto said, in the end, if you wish, we can all have an informal conversation after the time for this session ends. So I'm going to give the word to Cesario. Cesario, again, one more time. Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Rodrigo, for that beautiful introduction. Thank you, Toastmasters, for having me. I'm happy to contribute, to have a discussion with you, to talk about Agile. So my idea is to give a talk about Agile, show some slides, and I like very much the introduction that when the gentleman said, "Well, we are a club that likes to talk, so let's try that and do some talking." Let me share my slide deck that I have. I just want to be sure if you are seeing it. So if anybody can confirm this, that you are seeing the right part.
Yes, it's okay. You can continue.
We are seeing
Yes.
both slide. I mean the slide and also the notes. So maybe you just want to share.
Excellent.
Yeah, like that. Yeah.
This is better then.
Yes.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much. So let's get started with this. So I was wondering and talking to Rodrigo about what should I talk about, and And well, we didn't know, and we had this little chat. And I said, well, I can talk about a lot of things, and so, but you know your audience best, so maybe you have some ideas. And Rodrigo said, yes, I have some ideas, and he sent them out to me. And the ideas that he sent out are these ones. And he said, well, maybe you should talk about one of these. And I thought, well, this is all great, as the audience is mixed. I just heard there could be lawyers here, there could be people from insurances, there could be project managers here. Maybe I should cover all of these topics, and that's what I planned out to do, and I will try to do for you. So I will try to cover all of these topics in 3 short presentations, actually, short 12-minute presentations, so that we cover a lot of ground, and there is some topic for people who are new to Agile and some topics for people who are experienced with Agile. So let's start with the first one, which is the demystify Agile, as Rodrigo said it. For example, in Agile, the risk is greater. Maybe that is not true. We can explore that in a little bit, and talk about the principles and values of Agile. And the target I set to myself is, well, wouldn't it be great if I could do that in just 12 minutes? So I'm going to set my timer, and I'm going to try to do that in 12 minutes. So let's start. So Agile and Agile development, this is, as you might know, this already exists for more than 20 years. And as you know, when things get passed on, stories get told and told over and over again, the original meaning tends to get lost. And so lots of people are using Agile this, Agile that, and Agile transformation. But many times when I talk to my clients, and I think, well, maybe you're using that word, but maybe it doesn't mean what you think it means. So let's explore that a little bit. So what could go on if this happens with the telephone game that we are talking about, where the original message gets blurred. And I want to do that by sharing 3 essential ideas that you can concentrate on and take into account when you think about Agile. And the first one I want to share with you is the approach towards planning. So as you can see on the left here, there's this activity plan, and the activity plan is very useful in many situations. And making the plan, working the plan, making sure that we stay on the plan. Maybe we are successful if we complete according to plan. This is a very familiar approach and very useful in many situations. And the situations in which this is very useful is when we know to a high degree what we are doing, and we know to high degree how to do it. And an essential precondition is that the things that we need to do, so the questions that we need to answer, or the requirements that we need to fulfill, that these things are stable. So if we have this stable starting point, and we know how to do it because maybe we've done it before, or we did similar things before, then predictive planning is very, very useful and use a lot of time in our world. But on the other hand, if we don't know exactly what to do, if there are many things that are unknown or unknowable up front if things tend to change, if requirements cannot be stable, because, well, we just don't know that, then maybe the predictive approach to planning is not very useful. And in Agile, we ask these kinds of questions. So do we know a lot of things up front? For example, if we are developing a product, can we be confident that we know that the requirements are stable? Or can we be confident that we are actually solving the customer problem in the way that the customer actually values? Or even one step back, can we even be confident that we are solving the right problem? Well, maybe we are not solving the right problem, then we end up with lots of solutions to wrong problems. This happens a lot. Or are we confident that we can deliver within with these teams that we have within the planned time? Or maybe people have different opinions about how to solve the problem or how to adjust and use technology. Does the technology actually work in the way we like it to work, right? And so on. So there are many questions that, depending, of course, upon your context, that you can ask yourself. And if most of these questions are, well, not very predictable, not very plannable upfront, then maybe the predictive planning is not a good approach. And we need to change our planning approach in a way that we can take advantage of the things that we learn as, for example, the project, or as the product development, or as our journey unfolds. And one step further, in Agile, we can actually then we actually see that the ability that to adapt to late insights, to new information, if we can adapt to that at low cost, that would actually be a competitive advantage. If your competitor cannot do that, so this would be excellent. So in our case, in the Agile case, the problems that we try to solve are most of the questions that we have up front, we cannot really answer to high certainty, and therefore we prefer in Agile the approach to planning, which we call adaptive planning, meaning we plan to replan in such a way that we minimize risk by putting what we learned along the way back into our plan, and so our plan keeps changing all the time. And that is a first key value, key principle in Agile. That's the approach that we take to planning, which is adaptive planning. Now, in order to change direction and to take that new information into account, it's important to know, of course, in which direction you should replan. And therefore, there is another fundamental value or principle that I want to share, which is the approach to process. So we don't prefer to use a defined process control that we can use, for example, when we have a recipe. Let's say that we have the recipe for baking this cake here. If we then execute that recipe exactly as specified, with the right ingredients and the right oven, etc., we will get, every time we execute the recipe, we get the same quality cake. So we are not learning anything because we already know everything. We have it in a recipe. Now, if we don't know all these things, then we don't have a recipe, unfortunately. And therefore, the problem is more comparable to creating the first ever recipe for that cake. And of course, you cannot do that without learning. And in order for you to learn, we therefore in Agile choose the empirical process control, which means that we do a little step, like we do this much sugar in it, or we do the oven at this temperature, and then we bake it real quick and see what the effect is. And then based on that effect, we take the next step. So we are creating this feedback loop that we use to feed back into the input of our process, and then use that input that we get to adjust our steering, to adjust our thinking, to adjust our plan. So we need this empirical process control, which is about making steps, closing the feedback loop, and then putting that feedback into learning, and therefore then use that learning to make the next decision. And that brings us to the third Agile value, Agile principle I wanted to share, which is the approach toward learning. And I chose to share this example that I got from a good friend of mine. This is the piano, and I play myself. I play the drums. Maybe you play an instrument, or maybe your children play an instrument. But just imagine that you are trying to learn to play that instrument, let's say the piano. But you have to learn to play the piano on a special type of piano. This is a special piano. This is called a delay piano. And you have to learn to play the piano on that special piano. And this piano works as follows. So today you have the lesson, and you can press the keys, but you will only hear the sound the next week. And now you have to learn to play the piano on that delay piano. And you can imagine, of course, that this is very hard. And it is very hard because there is this weak delay on the feedback, which slows down a lot learning. So our approach towards learning in Agile is to have short feedback loops. The shorter the feedback loop, the shorter we can inspect what's going on and put that feedback back into our inputs, the faster we are learning. So in Agile, you see all these kinds of techniques, all these kinds of processes and practices, all gearing towards shortening the feedback loops so that we learn faster. And then the last topic I want to share in my 12-minute summary of Agile is the approach towards people. And I chose this picture. Most of you probably will recognize this picture as Scrum. And many think that this is the most important part of Scrum, the structure, but it is not. The structure, as you can see here, the 12 pages of 13 pages of the Scrum rules, those are not the most important ones. The most important part is that this, in this case, this Scrum framework, what it creates is not a product. What it creates is the opportunity for the people to create their own process. And that's what Scrum, which is a specific version of Agile, is all about. It is a framework that enables the people who do the work and therefore know best how to do the work. It enables those people to create their own process, and then they can use the process that they create, of course, to build whatever they are building. And key here is that we use the intellect of these people to create their process. And therefore, they are more likely to take ownership of that process. And if they take ownership of the process, then they are more likely then to care about it and then consider improving it as more is learned. So these are the key items I wanted to share in this 12 minutes. Predictive planning versus adaptive planning. defined process control versus empirical process control. And prescriptive process, like people telling the others, smart people, let's say, between quotes, telling the others how to work, versus the team creating and owning their own process. And that would be the first 12-minute talk of today. It was understandable. All right. Next topic then. Next topic was proposed, of course, by in our little chat, which is, well, maybe you can give an example and problems about Agile adoption. And I can, as that is my job to guide these kinds of adoptions. So I chose to share in 21 minutes a story about a case study that you can also read because we published that. And we also gave a talk about this at a keynote, actually, at the LESS conference in Munich in 2019, which is about a large scale adoption in a bank. And I cannot mention the bank, but if you Google it, you will see which bank it is. It's a large bank. And so let me guide you through the adoption so you can maybe recognize some problems that we were trying to address. And I will share also an overview how we addressed that. And this is a little bit more advanced maybe for some, but let's see. So the starting situation was that this lady, which works at the board -1 level, so a senior manager, running a group that is responsible for business loans, so banking companies that learn that want maybe loans from a bank. She was not very happy, and she had some issues like her teams were unable to say, well, more or less at this stage, we will have these kinds of problems solved, we will have these kinds of functionality delivered. So these kinds of forecasts were unreliable. And that made her feel uncomfortable as she had to show accountability to her stakeholders and her shareholders. So this was not a pleasant situation to be in for her. And another one was she had all these people. In this case, she had 23 teams, let's say. And when she wanted to focus all these 23 teams on the most important problems and on the most important work, she was not able to do that because lots of the teams could not work on the most important work because they didn't have the understanding, they didn't have the knowledge, they were busy doing other work. Although she was, let's say, the person who had the power, a formal power to decide what to work on. So she had these kinds of issues that she wanted to address, and she asked me to come over and have a look about what's going on because she was not getting any further with her initiatives. And what we did is I came in and I did what we call a go-see, meaning we just visit events, talk to people, talk to management, talk to teams, visit meetings, and so forth and so on. And one thing we noticed was this: they were structured like this, and you had let's say the IT part, which is orange, and the green part, which is business, and they created teams, but they didn't call those things teams. They called these things squads, which is okay, and they consisted of DevOps engineers, which are technical folks that can actually develop software, let's say. And it consisted of business people, which they called product owners or customer journey experts. And then they combined these groups into a team, which was a cross-functional team, which could actually cover lots of ground on the product level. And then they were also organized like they had things called chapters. So they had IT chapters and the business chapters. And chapters is a group of people who specialize in a certain area, like it could be a technology area, like technology X, or it could be a business area, like a small loans for at a certain level of complexity and a certain level of amount of money, or any other type of business area that they could specialize on. And they had business chapter leads, as you can see, and IT chapter leads who would manage such a group. And these, I noticed that these were single function line managers. So they were kind of line managers, but they were with people with a single skill were reporting to them. Which was interesting to note. And then they had agile coaches and a configuration of POC, they called it POC, which stands for Product Owner Chapter Lead Agile Coach. And these three people would get together and discuss team issues and how can we improve the team? Maybe we should move people between the teams, and they would discuss local team issues. Actually, they would take away responsibility from the team. Actually, they would make the team less autonomous, but that's what they didn't realize still. And this whole group, which was maybe a couple of hundred people, 500 people or so, they called this a tribe. And I started looking into that. And one thing I saw was that they would have 23 squads. And 23 squad backlogs. Now, for those who don't know what a backlog is just a nerd name for the work that a team needs to do. And what they did was, so they had 23 teams. You can see here a couple of them, and each team had such a backlog, as you can see, which is a list of work they have to do. And each team had a product owner / customer journey expert. And this looked very good, very well, very good from the outside. And then when that lady, let's say she wanted to have this red piece of work done, which is the most important work that needed to be done, she wanted this done, then well, a couple of teams needed to do something for that. And this was interesting. I said, wow. So for this red feature, these 3, 4, 5, 6 teams need to do something. Interesting. And then I would say, okay, what about the other work that needs to be done, right? For example, what about this yellow one? And then it turned out, well, if we need to do the yellow one, which is the next most important thing, then we would need other teams. But sometimes, as you can see here, on the right, this team was needed to do a little piece of the red work, but also a little bit of the green work. For example, this was a team responsible for creating reports. So both in the red feature and in the yellow feature, there was some work for the reporting team. But you can also see team 3 here, on the left side. So this team needed to work on the red feature, but they were already at full capacity. So it had so much work for them, this red feature, that they didn't have any more capacity to pick up work from the yellow feature. So they would have to, the yellow part that they needed to do, for example, this was the legal team, let's say. Well, they were already full capacity. They could not pick up the yellow part. So it would have to be, that part would need to wait. But of course, these were not the only pieces of work that needed to be done. For example, she had also the green part. And the green part needed other teams, but darn, also the legal team and the reporting team was needed, but these were already at full capacity. So they were creating more what we call work in progress. And you can also see that some teams still don't have anything to do, like team 2 and so on the right. There are some teams who don't have anything to do. For example, this was the CRM team, or this was the UX team, or this was the Java team, right? Their specialty was just not required at this moment. Well, they cannot sit around and do nothing. So what this company did was they would go down that list, that backlog that was at the overall tribe level, looking for work just to keep them busy. So they would go down and down and down, and maybe they would find this black item, which was on position 20, so not on position 4. And finally, they would find work for these teams. And so they would bring that work up in priority just to keep them busy. But you guessed it, darn. In order to do the black features, well, it's very likely that the other teams, some other team needs to do some work too, but it's likely that these teams are already busy. So we are creating even more work that is needs to be managed, work that is in progress, work that is being delivered out of sync and needs to be managed. I noticed that there was a lot of this work because of this way they were organized. I noticed after studying that dependencies among the teams ranged from 30 to 80%. So for most of the features of problems that needed to be solved, you needed 3 to 8 teams to do it. So most of the time, none of the teams could actually solve a problem end to end. This gave rise to all these issues of work in progress and so on. So they had to do something about this. Somebody had to manage all these pieces of work that were flooding over. And of course they had special meetings for that and special roles like feature owners and connecting the dot teams. So all kinds of processes and roles that would manage this work and make sure that the dot would be connected in the end when a team finally gets to do their black part or their yellow part, and the other teams need to know that, and they need to combine the work into a finished product. So there was all these extra processes that were required to manage this, and of course this would not speed up, as you can see. This would not improve the feedback loop. As you can see, for example, if you look at the black feature here, it could take months before all the pieces would be done, and then finally you could close the feedback loop and see if it worked, see if it was the right thing, see if we understood it correctly, and so on. So there was a strong learning disability actually. And another thing, of course. Another thing that I had noticed was that there was this strong tendency to ensure that each of these teams would work very efficient, and so for that they had all these kinds of measures that they would use to keep track of performance of the teams. And there were some incentives, some management practices, etc., to optimize the teams locally so that they would work and be more efficient locally. But in this configuration, you can imagine that what will happen if the teams will become more effective, more efficient individually, that it's more likely that more work will become out of sync. More work will be unaligned. More work in progress will be injected into the system. And because you're not taking the perspective of the complete end-to-end value work, you're taking the perspective which is only a part of the value work, and you try to optimize that. And if you do that, we know that if you optimize the parts of a system like this, if you optimize those parts taken separately, then we know that the performance of the whole will likely go down, which was absolutely the case here. So these teams were locally optimizing, and it had to do with this thinking mistake that it's more efficient if each team specializes and focuses on its own narrow specialty. So these were some of the root causes that gave the problem to this lady that I described. So what did we do to address this in this adoption? So let me spend a couple of more minutes on that. So what we did is we studied more about how the work, so the value work that needs to be done, how that actually works. And how did we do that? So I will give you the simplified version. So what we did is we just start with the end users, like let's say the people who do the risk assessment, the companies who want to have a loan approved, and so on. There are many types of customers, users of this large product. And then we say, okay, what are the needs, what are the problems, what are the features that these users actually consume, what are the problems that they want our product to solve for them. And let's make a list of that, of all these things that these customers want. So real end customers. And then if we have that list, what we did is we just studied and said, well, if we are solving these problems, if we are developing these features, then which of the squads do we need for that? And we studied that. So let's say that for this green problem here, this green feature, these squads need to do something. They need to update a document or do a verification or configure something or develop something. And then we did that for the green feature also. And then we took a note, oh, these squads need to do something on it. And then we took the third feature and took notes, so which squads need to do something. And then we did that for a set of problems, set of features that we expected to be developing, to be solving in the next 6 months, and keeping notes of which squads were required, which squads needed to do something. And we came to a interesting discovery that we, as you can see here, which is a very simplified version, we noticed that some of the squads are needed together most of the time. And this is interesting. So as you can see here, these 3 squads are needed together. They need to do something together most of the time. Or if you state it otherwise, most of the time, none of these squads individually can make something useful, something that we can actually sell. They need each other. They are interdependent. And if they are interdependent, if they depend on each other's work, if their work is input for the other team and then their output is input for the other team, etc., etc. And if what they do influences the work of the other squad, but it's also vice versa. The work that one squad does also influences the work of the other squad. Then why are we organized in that way? It's not very useful if you want to optimize for learning, short feedback loops, and flexibility. Now, in reality, we had these 23 teams. So in reality, it looked like this. And what you see here is For example, you see a lot of blue, and blue means that if it's completely blue, it would mean that for a certain set of problems, a certain set of features, these teams would be required 100% of the time. So we identified actually 3 main areas, and therefore we used that to redesign the squads. So it's obvious, I think. If you look at the blue teams, let's say, you can see team 1, 2, 3, 4, 21, 6, 7. If these teams all need to do something together across their specialities 100% of the time, but each team can only do a part at this moment, then it is a good idea to redesign the teams in such a way that each team can do all of the skills required. So you would still have team 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, team 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, and 21. These people would still be there, but the people in the team would be reconfigured so that each team could now would have the skills required to deliver the end-to-end problem. So that's what we did. We organized, we redesigned the teams based on this study about how the work works, which is a key aspect of organizing for agility and for speed of learning. And what it boils down to that we had groups of 9, 10 teams, all working from one PBL, from one backlog, which is one list of work. And each team was geared towards reaching that goal that eventually any team could pick up any item that would be on top. So therefore, we would be able to focus all teams on the most important work, and we would not have to top up the work into little work packages, which would never, of course, balance out among the capacity of the teams. So we redesigned the teams in such a way that each team could pick up an end-to-end problem. So I hope this made sense. And if not, please write your questions down. There's some time to answer that. So that was a short 21-minute summary of that adoption with some problems that we covered, where we started with, some problems that they had in their current organization design, and the solutions that we implemented there. Now, this brings us to the last one, the last topic that we agreed on in our little chat in LinkedIn that I had with Rodrigo, which is what it means to scale Agile, actually. What does it mean? So let's take the last 12 minutes for that. I hope you're still with me, as I cannot read your.
We are here with you.
Yeah, okay, that's good. So
you'll get the top score from our Timekeeper. You're having everything on time.
Yes, I don't know if you can see it, but I'm just timing myself. I don't know if you can see it on my camera. So
yeah, I can see.
Excellent. All right, so that's good to hear that you're still here. So let's discuss the last topic, which was what it means to scale Agile in this case. So this is a very broad topic. We can talk about this just like the other topics for many days. But let me try to summarize it in 12 minutes. So most of the times, at least all of the times, at my customers, what it means is that we need to redesign the organization. And let me try to explain that, how this works. So Just imagine a big truck, and like those big trucks that drive on the highway, and they have 50,000 kilograms of load on them. And this truck has a design, as you can imagine, and it is designed for certain goals that it wants to optimize for. And one of the things is, well, it is designed in such a way that it can drive long distances. It is designed in such a way that it doesn't break down easily, so that we can utilize that truck at high levels of utilization. Because the more we utilize it, the more we can profit from it. Our return on our investment increases linearly in line with our level of utilization. It is designed to carry heavy loads. It is designed to maybe not consume too much diesel. So it has all these design characteristics. It has spare tires that are not used, but you can just use them if something goes wrong. So it's designed to be up and running most of the time. But sometimes, as you can imagine, sometimes you see that. Not very often, but sometimes you see such a truck stranded next to the highway, and it has a flat tire or something, or the tires exploded. And then there a whole smaller truck needs to come with a couple of persons, and they would need to change the tires there next to the highway, and this can take a lot of time. It can take hours to change the tire, and that's okay. They didn't design the truck to change the tires very quickly because they designed it for the other goals. They designed it the truck to be operational for a long time, not to break down. And in the exceptional case that it breaks down, then okay, they accept the pain that it takes 4 or 5 hours to change it because it happens exceptionally, and that's okay. Now, if you look at this design, you can imagine that this design has different goals it optimizes for. As you can see, this is a Formula One car, and it has to carry a skinny person for the duration of one race. That's it. And here you can see 23 people or more. And if you would measure what they are doing, if you would measure their activity, then you would notice that most of the time, all these people are waiting. One is waiting for the other to take off the tire, then the other is waiting for the other to put on the tire, and then the other one is waiting for the other to fasten the tire. If you would do a efficiency analysis here, it would be very inefficient. But as you can imagine, these people can change the tires much quicker than the truck. Actually, the world record is now even faster than this. They can change 4 tires in 1.90 seconds, actually, and put in some fuel. And that's okay. That's because they designed their system for these optimizing goals. Now, if I would ask you this question that you can now read on the screen, then what do you think about that question? So how many Formula One pit stop teams do you need to bring to the truck so that you can change the tires of the truck in 1.92 seconds? So you can choose any Formula pit stop team. You can choose 10, 100 of these teams. So does it make sense, this question? Is it possible? Sorry?
I think it's not possible.
Yes, it's a trick question. It doesn't make sense. And that's because the design of the truck optimized for different goals. Now, what I run into a lot are companies that say, well, we are a truck. Why don't you come in and help us be agile? So we want to be like fast, like the Formula One pit stop team. But we are a truck. So they say, Cesario, how can we scale agile in our big, complex organization? And the answer is, well, your question doesn't make sense. That's the answer. It's impossible. Why? Well, because your current organization design was put in place for goals that were valid in the past. You added process, you added structure, you added policy, you divided responsibilities for goals that were very valid. But these goals are not the goals that you want to optimize for right now, which is speed and adaptability. So instead of scaling agile, which is nonsense, you should consider simplifying your unnecessarily complex organization. Unnecessarily, because the complexity was added when you still were pursuing the other goals. So if you want to be agile, you have to consider all the processes, structures, policies, roles that were added, but they are now no longer applicable. So scaling agile is much more about simplifying the current organization design, removing unnecessary stuff instead of adding stuff, which you which would come to mind if you think about scaling, which is making it bigger and adding and so on. No, not at all. If you want to be fast and flexible and focus on our customer value, you have to think about most of the time how to simplify your current organization design so that you end up with an organization design that is optimized for the goals that you are pursuing. So we're talking about structure. How do we divide the work? Do we divide it across according to specialities? Or do we divide it according to value for the end user, for example? Human operations, what kind of people do we require? What is it that we value in our people? Do we value very deep, single-skilled specialists who can do only one thing, which we need? But if you only have those kinds of persons, then the work, of course, doesn't balance out, and we will have a bottleneck everywhere. Sometimes the bottleneck is here, next week it's there, next month it's there somewhere else. Or do we also value people who have multiple skills? Maybe they are not as good as the super skilled person, but we need both probably, super skilled persons and multi-skilled persons. So does our human operations system, does our career path system, does our appraisal system promote value such peoples, the development of these kinds of people in our organization? And of course, the last one that we have to think about is which kind of processes then do we require for that, right? Is it predictive, prescriptive processes, or is it ownership of the process by the teams? How do we coordinate the teams? Do the teams coordinate themselves? Or do we take away the responsibility for coordination from the teams and assign it to a special role, creating handoff, maybe slowing down, maybe pulling away decision-making power from the place where the most information is to make the right decision. So all these kinds of decisions, of course, are context specific, but these are the things that we need to talk about, need to think about when we talk about scaling agile. If we have to summarize it in 12 minutes. So organize around So end customer value, not internal efficiencies, right? Control by steering on outcomes, meaning stuff that's of usefulness to a user instead of outputs or partially done work. Not very good idea if you want to be flexible and fast. Who makes the decisions, right? Is that based on people far away from the problem, but high in the hierarchy? Or can we bring decisions down to the people who actually know the data in detail? So what can we do about that? Are we having a single function line organization that promotes single function specialists? Or do we also have cross-functional line organizations where a cross-functional line manager promotes the development of cross-functional teams and promotes the performance of that team, because that team as a team can only develop something that's useful for the end customer. So this is the thing we need to think about if we are scaling Agile. And that brings me to the end. I hope you are not bored by it. So I just want to say thank you, and I'm open for questions. And I want to give it back to Rodrigo.
Okay. Thank you, Cesario. Thank you. I think it was very interesting from the beginning till the end. I particularly like the way you put things, so in a way that simplify things, that images, very strong images that you put in there from time to time. And well, it was a pleasure to hear you again and to hear your your presentations again. Yeah, we have this questions and answers moment now. So you finished a little bit earlier, so we may have more questions in the meantime. If anyone wants to put any questions, please go ahead and put it in the chat. If not, I have a few questions here. I also have one question from Danielle Alves. Thank you, Danielle. I have a few questions myself, so I'll start with the question from Danielle, and for everyone else, if you want to make any question, we have time. So go ahead, put a question here, or if you want to ask directly to Cesario, then we can. I think we can do that. Okay. So Cesario, for the question from Danielle is, what are the best details from Agile you would present to a client to assure that the scope requirements of the project would be achieved on time and on budget? I think this is a single Scrum team question, right?
Okay, so this is the, if I understand it correctly, this is the iron triangle problem. So meaning, how can we predict the future in detail so that we can upfront, so upfront meaning at the start of the project, which is the moment in all of history of the universe that we know the least about the project. So at that moment, we must predict the future and say, this is what we're going to deliver exactly on time and on budget. So of course, this question is non-answerable, or problems that have to do with innovation, that have to do with discovery, that have to do with development. So therefore, in Agile, we cannot answer this question. In Agile, what we can do is we can fix time, for example, fix budget, and fix outcomes, but we cannot fix the exact outputs. So what am I saying? With Agile, we can create the possibility, we can maximize that possibility that when the time comes, when there is no more money and no more time, that we have delivered the most valuable scope, which is not the scope that you think you want at the beginning of the project, by the way. So this is what Agile gives you. It gives you the risk reduction, not to be to put your head in the sand and then just go and do what you thought was right, but to balance and discover the luxury, for example, of the features, maybe discover new features that are much more important than the features you thought were important. Maybe don't do these features because, well, they don't add any value. To play this game, to maximize the chances that when there's no more money, when there's no more time, which always comes that day, that you then have the most valuable working solution for your customer. That's what the Agile approach gives you. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, Daniel is saying yes with his thumb. Okay, thank you. Another question from Roberto, our president. Roberto asks, on the bank example, you said that it was required to adjust people's skills. In your opinion, what are the most recommended Agile skills and Agile mindset?
The most recommended Agile skills. So independent of the context of where you are, so technology or business domain, market, fundamentally in Agile, I believe, is working in teams. And working in teams in a situation of pressure, in a situation of complexity, in a situation of uncertainty, asks a lot of the social capabilities, of the communication capabilities, of the conflict resolution capabilities, of the communication capabilities of the people. So I think one of the key things to focus on is being able to create this team dynamic where people can act as adults and professionals, give each other feedback, receive the feedback not as criticism, but as professional tips, professional remarks, and make create these social skills to be a high-performing team, a professional high-performing team. So I think this aspect, this social dynamic aspect, is independent of the context, is a key skill that I would search for and strive for in teams. So regarding the mindset, I think the mindset, which is a very big topic also, but I think one thing is that, can we accept the reality of doing complex work? Can we as an organization accept that we don't know upfront everything, and therefore we have to learn? And when we learn, we make mistakes. Guess what? If we didn't make mistakes, we were not learning anything. So can we accept that that is required to learn? And can we accept this uncertainty and deal with reality instead of believing in fiction and fictional plans? I think that would be an interesting mindset to challenge and to consider in your organization.
Okay, thank you, Cesario. Thank you, Roberto. Another question now from Ivan. Ivan question is actually close to my question, one of the questions I had here for you. So Ivan question is meaning about large enterprises, people and culture. What is the main challenges that an organization faces when adopting Agile methodologies? And if I may, I would like to add another sub-question here. Because I know that, Cesario, that your experience is very much on getting into an organization, getting into a company and helping them to adopt Agile, but also to move from the when the company has scattered teams, scattered Scrum teams, and help them organize and escalate and try to adopt this scaling agile methodology that we're talking about. So my question is not only for the question that Ivan puts here about the difficulties, the challenges that they have adopting agile methodology, but also scaling the agile practices that they have.
Mm-hmm.
Challenges and difficulties that you usually face.
What I usually face. So this can go in many directions. So let's talk about a people problem, a people's challenge. So for example, these people, there are people who are working maybe 5 years, 10 years. That are maybe working 5 years, 10 years on a single skill. And these people are known as, they have status. They are specialists. They are important. Well, if they are not there, then, well, certain things cannot happen. Now, when we move to Agile, we say, well, I know that you are special, but everybody's special now. So now you're promoted to a team member. And, well, you have to do something else maybe that's outside of your expertise, if that is better for the performance of the team. So this is this touches can touch the ego of persons. So this emotional challenge, this emotional reaction to doing that, to working outside of your primary specialty that you have been working on for many years. This is a big issue sometimes. Yes, that's one. Culture-wise, so the problem with culture-wise, the culture as I see culture as the lessons that we learn in the organization and how we do the work here. So this is just how we do it, because, well, this is how we do it. But why do we do it that way? Well, that's because we learned how to do it that way, and therefore we do it that way. Now, when you're not an agile company, you want to do the agile way of working, this is radically different most of the time. So this means that the culture will need to change. But how do you change the culture? Well, you can't change the culture directly. You have to unlearn what you learned before and then learn new things. And as you learn new things and they work, well, then they become culture. So this is hard because it means that learning is just work. It's not you do work and you learn. No. Part of work is learning. And this is, wow, this has implications for people, for the way management appraises the people, for budgeting and so on. So this is also from the culture perspective, one that pops to my mind at this moment.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So I have some questions myself here. We don't have any more questions in the chat here, but I have a few of myself. Because Cesare, because we have a lot of people here that are not necessarily from the IT area, they might be thinking, okay, but much of this that we're talking about is mainly applied to IT businesses or IT departments. But we know that one of the trends that we see nowadays is that the agile principles are being applied to other areas that not necessarily IT. So do you know of any examples or any advices that you may suggest that we can think about when applying to other areas that not necessarily IT?
Yes, there are many examples of using the agile approach to other in other areas like sales teams, like education, like communication departments, like hospitals.
I remember sorry, I remember the Kanban board on the refrigerator for the family to manage the week.
Oh yes, yeah, that's more family stuff. So the problem is that the context of medical or the context of sales, these are just this is just another type of problem that they are solving, and the less. So I don't know if I can use that word here. So the benefits of agile, like making work transparent, being able to understand where you are, being able to help others in your team, being able to have a goal as a team and strive towards that, being able to help each other when there's a bottleneck somewhere. These kinds of benefits we see in sales teams and so on, as I was mentioning, a lot, and techniques for visualizing the work, techniques for planning the week, techniques for giving the feedback to each other, and so on. Those apply there too. The process improvement that comes from visualizing the work and so on, and talking about that together also gives lots of benefits. But I have to make it clear that the most of the benefits that you will get if your problem is complex. So if it's a problem that involves discovery, it involves innovation, it involves doing things that are uncertain. Then agile is at its the original agile thinking is at its strongest, which is most of the time the case if you are developing a product, for example, or developing a marketing campaign, or if you're developing. When the word development is in there, it's probably a complex kind of problem. There, agile is most powerful.
Okay, thank you very much. Cesario, I have one final question. If there's no one, is there anyone who wishes to ask a final question to Cesario? Well, it's your last chance. If not, I'm going to ask the final question myself. Okay, so Cesario, my final question is related to large-scale Scrum. So large-scale Scrum, as some of you might know, is one of the frameworks for scaling Agile. There are others, but LESS is the one that I've learned from you. My question is, what could you resume in the 5 minutes that we have left? What is LESS and how it's different from anything else? And I'm particularly like to hear about the way you rebuild the organization from scratch. I like that idea. If you just can develop it, you have only 5 minutes to do it. Sorry. Tough question, sorry.
You summarize less in 5 minutes. That's the question, right?
Yes.
Okay. So actually, you can summarize it in 5 minutes, but it requires you to know single team Scrum. So I don't know if you guys know that, but so let's assume you know single team Scrum. So then, if you know single team Scrum, which has these roles like product owner, Scrum Master, and team, it is written. And the context is one product. That's why it's called single team Scrum. And therefore it has a product owner and so on. If you count the words, the number of times the word product is in the Scrum Guide. It's around 90 or something. So product is an important word. Now, most of my customers, most large organizations don't have one team. So they have many teams. And if you take the less approach, then you don't add many Scrum teams. Because adding a second Scrum team would imply that you would have a second product. So if you have 10 teams and if you have 10 Scrum teams, then it would mean that you would have 10 products, which is not the case often. Often large organizations don't have 100. If they have 100 teams, they don't have 100 products. They have maybe 5 products or 3. So what less does is it tries to, and it succeeds, to get all the benefits that you have from single team Scrum, like that the team is focused on the end customer, like that the team has customer empathy, that the team understands the whole product, all these benefits that the team has focus, all these benefits from single team Scrum. What less does is it gives you those benefits, but now with 10 teams or 20 teams working on the same product. So instead of having multiple Scrum teams, you have multiple team Scrum. You still have one product. You still have one product owner. You still have one product backlog. You just have a lot of teams. And that is optimizing the whole, which is in this case the product, instead of optimizing the parts of the product. Because if you optimize the parts taken separately, the performance of the system will likely go down. So that's, I think, the essence. For me, that's the essence of less. It optimizes the whole of product development, not the parts. And it's multiple team Scrum, not multiple Scrum teams.
Right.
There's a big difference there.
Okay. So we still have, I just got the message from the Timekeeper that we still have 3 minutes left. So one last question here from Roberto. And the question is, what is the most common misperception that people have about Agile?
Oh, the common misperception, I think, in my experience, is that Agile is for cowboys, and that they don't plan, and that they cannot commit, and that they cannot give a date and a budget and so on. That this is just cowboy work. This is totally uncontrolled chaos, which is absolutely, absolutely false. Agile is, I don't want to use the word Agile, but because it's not, Agile is a container, but I'm going to use it because we are using the word Agile in our conference here. So Agile, for example, Scrum, which is a implementation or a flavor of Agile, is one of the most disciplined and most controlled ways of doing work. We plan every day in Scrum. We're planning all the time. We can deliver very good, very predictable. So I think that's one of the big misconceptions. It's very controlled. It's very much, you can very, very much reduce risk, all kinds of risk, schedule risk, technology risk, people risk, market risk. And it's very disciplined. I think that's a misperception.
Okay, so I think we reached the time limit. We're very disciplined here. So no more questions. There's no more questions. So again, once more, thank you very much. I think it was a very good moment here for everyone. It was a pleasure to hear you again. Hopefully we will have more moments like these with other subjects, with other themes that we can address, and hopefully with you here physically present. and as Sebastian was saying, and after that we'll take you out for dinner and have some pastéis de nata.
I like that.
Okay. So
Well,
thank you
thank
very
you.
much. Thank you everyone for your
Thank you.
availability, for attending. So I'm passing the word to our Sergeant at Arms, Sebastião. Thank
I
you.
have a few words. Sorry, let me just
Sorry,
say a
Roberto,
few
go
words.
Okay.
Sorry. Cesario, first of all, thank you very much. It was a pleasure to listen, let's say, from your heart, because you're saying what you feel and what you believe. It was not a workshop or a training. It's more like a conversation. Let me share two comparisons. The first one is the biggest insights I've got from here and then I would like to compare Agile with a Toastmasters club. Okay. The first insight, it was amazing for me, is that Agile is about minimizing risks, which is very important. So you explained it very well, and you learn throughout the process. So it's great. And that was very important. Those I believe 12 initial minutes. Okay, to give that general overview of Agile, and say that both Agile and Predictive, they are both important on different contexts. So each one has its own context. No one is better than the other, and at least that was implicit. That was very important. It's not because it's fashion. It's because Agile works in a very specific context when there is uncertainty and we want to minimize risk. Thank you very much for sharing that. My second part is I was delighted with all your presentation, because I was comparing Agile and Agile mindset and Agile squads and teams with a club like ours. Okay, so on average, a Toastmaster club is about 20-something people. We are 38, but on average 20 people in the meeting, and that's great, because we are here because we make mistakes. And like you said, in your organizations must accept that they don't know everything and they have to learn. That's why we are here. So we have that type of Agile mindset. We know that we make mistakes and we have to learn. The second one, which is, let's say, the best one, is that on Agile, the shorter the periods, like the example you have given on the piano, right? You have the feedback loop to learn. That's we do every week. Okay? So every week you deliver a speech, you do a role, and you get feedback. And that's amazing, because it looks like we are crazy people here, but we deliver speeches, but we grow all together, because we are here to get the feedback, and we get the feedback sooner, and we apply it immediately. The third one is self-organized people. We are a self-organized team. Right? Although there is a direction, so there is offices, because for some reasons through Toastmasters International, within ourselves we are self-organized, and the most important is that we have multi-skills. Any one of us can do any role in a meeting, in a session. Can be the Toastmaster, the Timekeeper, the accountant, the grammarian, and the general evaluator, and the table topics master. And by the way, there was a manual which was called Competent Leader. And for a member to be a competent leader, he has to play all the roles. So any member here that can be called a competent leader, he has to play all the roles in a meeting. That was great. That is exactly what to expect for here, because we work as a team. We can count on any one of us, because anyone can do anything. That is great. So I was really amazed. And the last but not the least, and you also said about Agile teams, is to have a common goal, right? So people, they join for a common goal. And we have just one goal, which is members' growth. We want people to grow as people, as individuals, and better professionals, and also those social skills that you have said before, right? In the social dynamics. So I was amazed. So I was, wow, we are an Agile team, we're an Agile club, and we didn't know that. So thank you very much for opening your eyes and for being here with us today. Thank you very much.
you.
So
Bye-bye.
Picking on Roberto's words, thank you very much for Cesario for your presentation, your time and your energy on presentations Agile. Thank you very much, everybody, for being here with us. And we invite to all you to meet us again next Monday at 7:45 here in Zoom. Thank you very much. And
Thank you very much, Cesario.
it's closed. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. It was great. I believe now you can switch to Portuguese.
Yep.
There's lá
Everybody
para
speaks
português.
Portuguese? I think so.
Não sei se algum dos convidados tem alguma pergunta que queira colocar, algum feedback que queira dar, se valeu a pena, se houve alguma coisa que tenha sido extraordinário ou que